Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back to another live stream. I hope you all are doing well. It is Saturday evening. I hope you all have had a fantastic Saturday and a great weekend so far. It isn't over yet, of course. Still got just over a day and Saturday night as well to go. Some of you might even be sitting there getting ready now to go on a night out and go and have a few drinks and enjoy and chill and enjoy the weekend. Some of you might have been out last night like myself and feel absolutely woeful today and never ever ever want to consume a drop of alcohol ever again in your entire life. We don't know. Listen, we don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that is just me. Anyway, we're going to sit down today and talk about the latest Everton transfer news. We're going to talk about James Tarkowski and a report stating that James Tarkowski's move to Everton is completed, and the reason it hasn't been announced yet is because Everton are waiting for the player to A, return back from holiday, because he's currently on a family holiday, and also B, for his contract to officially finish with Burnley before announcing him as an Everton player, because of the tension between the two clubs anyway. Obviously, after Burnley decided to file some form of complaint or letter or whatever it was to the Premier League, but towards the back end of last season regarding financial fair play. But the article states that the Tarkowski deal is done. He is an Everton player. He has signed his contract. The terms have all been agreed, and it is just waiting for confirmation now, so we'll talk about that one today. We're also going to talk about Manchester City defender slash midfielder Oleksandr Zinchenko, who has been heavily linked with Everton a lot over the last 48 hours or so. Apparently the Ukrainian captain, I believe he is open for a move away from Manchester City. He is not wanting to play left back anymore. He's wanting to play in what he deems as his more natural position, which is as a central midfielder, and he is effectively I think admitted that if he has to move away from Manchester City to be able to do that, then he will do. And Everton is said to be heavily interested in him, and a team that I don't want to say leading the race, because that's probably the wrong terminology to use, but certainly keen on the Manchester City midfielder slash defender, as I say, because he wants to play in midfield, and that's why I believe he wants to move. But he's played the majority of his football at Manchester City as a left back, of course, so we'll get into all of that as well. Everton have also been linked with Portuguese midfielder Matheus Nunes. Now, if you were around the channel last summer, and I think maybe even the summer before as well, but certainly last summer when we sat here and pretty much every day we done a transfer news update, I think we spoke about Matheus Nunes on about 25 consecutive days, and it even got to a point where Portuguese press was stating that the deal for Matheus Nunes to sign for Everton was completely done. The fee had been agreed, the deal was done, he'd signed his contract, etc. Obviously there was conflicting reports over in the UK that there was interest from Everton, but there was nowhere near as far down the line as what the Portuguese press was stating. Obviously, we found out that it wasn't anywhere near as far down the line as the Portuguese press was stating. Matheus Nunes didn't become an Everton player. That sort of petered out a little bit, and now he is being linked with Everton again. So will we have another Andrei Yarmolenko situation? Will we have another situation where we're constantly being linked with a player for 2, 3, 4 summers on the bounce, and then we never end up signing them and they end up going elsewhere? We'll wait and see. But we will talk about Matheus Nunes as well, because he has been linked with Everton over the last 24 hours or so. So, before we get into all of that, how you doing? Hope you're all doing well. Let's jump into the comments before we start. Stephen said, yes, Cam, bro, you okay, my mate? I'm not too bad, mate. Yatey says, how are you, mate? I'm doing well, I'm not too bad. Goodison Gang says, is Tarkowski confirmed? He's not confirmed by the club. Obviously, as I've just said, there seems to be, a couple of reasons as to why the deal hasn't been confirmed yet, but I never want to say anything's done until it's done, and I never will with Everton, because if any club could fuck up a situation like this, it would be Everton. So I'm not going to sit here and say Tarkowski is 100% an Everton player, because ultimately he's not 100% an Everton player until we're seeing him at Finch Farm holding that new kit up. And ultimately we're seeing pictures from him and quotes from him about how excited he is to play for Everton, and we're seeing him, playing in pre-season games, etc. So until we see all of that, he isn't officially an Everton player. But put it this way, it would be a ridiculous surprise if James Tarkowski isn't to sign for Everton from this point. And as I said, that's not just me making it up or me sitting here and guessing. That's what we're reading in news articles. But we'll go through them anyway in a moment. Philip says, "Hey up, what's happening, Philip? You doing well?" Jason says, "Hi Cam, a nice live on a wet Saturday." Yeah, mate. As I said, it was lovely weather last night, so I went out and enjoyed a couple of beverages, maybe a couple too many, but I thought, do you know what, there's not much going on today. I've just been out, it's absolutely freezing, the Asda was rammed. I thought, you know what, let's sit down and let's talk about some transfer news, shall we? Been up for 2 days, me, says Stephen. Inky says, "I'd like Zinchenko, but we don't have the money." Philip says, "Hi Inky." Jason says, "Burnley are being an arse." Inky says, "Hi Philip." And Goodison says, "Haven't been here for a few days, Cam, so I've just seen the new background. It's really nice. Well done, my mate." It's all down to Joe, mate, if I'm being honest with you. I have, the only input I have on the graphical side of things on the channel is basically saying to Joe, "Oh my God, this is unbelievable. Nice one, mate. Thank you very much." If you missed the live stream we did the other day, we introduced the new identity of the channel, the new intro, the new logo, the new background, the new banner, the new everything. Basically, the whole channel has effectively changed. Not changed in regards to the content. You'll still have me coming on and rambling nonsense, 3, 4, 5 times a week, whatever it is about Everton. But in terms of the design and the look and I suppose the identity of the channel, it's all changed, and that's of course down to Joe. I think he says, "I tell you what, Miko could be a pull factor for Shinchenko." He could be. I'm sort of torn on the Zinchenko stuff. As I said, we'll get into it a little bit later on in the live stream when we talk about him. We are going to talk about James Tarkowski first. But we'll get into the Zinchenko stuff a little bit later on, because I am a little bit torn between whether or not I think Everton should pursue this deal, because Manchester City ultimately would want a fair bit of money for him. He's a Premier League champion. He's played a fair few games for Manchester City. I'm not exactly sure how many games he has played. We'll have a little look at that, as I said, later on in the live stream. But he's played a fair amount of games for them. As I said, he's the captain of his national team, so they're not going to want 10, 15 million pound for him. They're going to want a relatively decent return on their investment. And I'm just not so sure for the money we'd have to spend on him. I'm not so sure he's that him as a type of player is that integral to what we need for the money we'd have to spend on him, especially given our financial situation. But anyway, as I said, we'll get onto all of that a little bit later on in the live stream. But let's talk about James Tsarkovsky first, because this is the obviously the transfer that's as furthest down the line. The only real sort of player that Everton have been linked with to a point where a deal has looked like it's going to happen. Everybody else, from Shinchenko to Matheus Nunes to Sami Khedira and whoever else we've been linked with over the last couple of weeks or so, it's all just been paper talk as of now. When Everton are interested, and Everton might be interested in bringing in this player or that player, whereas the Tarkowski deal obviously is a deal that has been being worked on. Looks like it has been completed. Now, the Liverpool Echo, who of course are in situations like this, a fairly reliable source. I know a lot of people give the Echo a lot of stick, and there's a lot of people that don't really like reading the Echo or don't really believe a lot of the things that the Echo say. But if Liverpool Echo come out and say a transfer is pretty much done, then we can almost take it that it's pretty much done, to be fair, because again, it's definitely putting your neck on the line to write something that I'm about to read if it's not to be the truth. So the Liverpool Echo reported that, and this was on the 15th, so midweek, that James Tarkowski's free transfer to Everton is done, but isn't expected to be announced until the end of the month, when his contract at Burnley officially expires because of the sensitive relationship between the two clubs at present. Tarkowski is understood to have agreed terms with Frank Lampard's side, with his contract at Turf Moor expiring this summer. Now, if you're not so sure what that is meant by the sensitive relationship between the two clubs, I think it was Chris Beasley who wrote that article in the Echo. That's referring to obviously the situation towards the end of the season when Burnley and Leeds decided to complain to the Premier League about Everton's spendings and Everton's finances and what Everton had shared and what Everton hadn't shared. They consequently and ironically only seemed to want to complain when Everton had gotten out of the relegation zone and it was looking more and more likely that Everton were going to survive after that win against Leicester. They weren't that bothered or that interested in complaining when Everton were 5 points below the pair of them in the relegation zone, and the pair of them were the team that were on top. They didn't seem to complain then. They only seemed to complain, when Everton were seemingly out of it, and it looked like it was going to be between one of those two teams to go down. Obviously, it ended up being Burnley. As far as I'm concerned, on that situation in itself, the complaint about Everton to the Premier League from Burnley and Leeds, as far as I'm aware, it's completely down to the Premier League and then Leeds and Burnley to resolve that issue. I don't think Everton have got any involvement in it whatsoever. It's a problem that Leeds and Burnley have, or maybe just Burnley now, probably just Burnley, let's be honest. Leeds probably aren't arsed anymore, but it's an issue that those two clubs have with the Premier League. It's not actually with Everton, because the Premier League effectively signed off everything that Everton were doing. So the fact that Leeds and Burnley aren't happy with it is now down to the Premier League to have those conversations with both Leeds and Burnley. All Everton have got to do is tread sort of carefully, I suppose, in terms of spending and FFP and stuff like that, because the Premier League will be keeping a keen eye on us, especially given other clubs have complained now, even though, let's be honest, we all know the reason they complained was actually nothing to do with the fact that they wanted to see our finances or wanted to see what documents we were publishing. It was the fact that they were trying to get any form of points deduction possible to make sure that we were down there as well. But anyway, listen, I digress. That's not the point of this article. The point of this article is that it very clearly states James Tarkowski's move to Everton is done, completed. And I think there was another article that said very similar, but also mentioned that he's still on holiday. Fabrizio Romano tweeted on Thursday night, no changes on James Tarkowski deal. Medical already completed 1 week ago. Full agreement with Everton on personal terms and agent fees. Official statement pending. So Fabrizio Romano not really mentioning the situation between Everton and Burnley, and not specifically saying the reason it hasn't been announced is because of this, but he's effectively just acting like it's all done and we're just waiting for a statement. So yeah, it seems like James Tarkowski is an Everton player. As I said, I'm not going to sit here and say it's absolutely 150% done, because this is Everton we're talking about, and ultimately at the end of the day, until I see James Tsarkovsky holding up an Everton shirt at Finch Farm, and coming out and doing an interview about how excited he is to join the football club, then that's when I'll believe it. But as I said, it makes sense. It makes sense for Everton to not want to sort of, I suppose, I don't know. On one hand, it makes sense. On another hand, you sort of think, well, we've signed the player. We're absolutely within our rights to announce him, even though he doesn't officially become an Everton player until the 1st of July. Erling Haaland doesn't officially become a Man City player until that time as well, but he's been pictured in Manchester City gear, and it's, he's officially being announced. There's a lot of players, that Darwin Núñez being another one. A lot of players that have officially been announced, that ultimately aren't official players of that club until the end of this month and the beginning of next month, but they've been announced because those agreements have been in place. So on one hand, I almost look at Everton and think, no, fuck Burnley. They decided to complain because they were being petty, and they wanted Everton to get points deducted because they were in a terrible situation. We've signed the player, the players agreed to deal with us, get him announced, and move on with it. But this is Everton, and we know Everton don't like to cause any issues or cause any problems or whatever. So yeah, it looks like we're going to have to wait for the official announcement for James Tarkowski. Maybe as well, the club might be waiting on the deal with Kazoo to end and the deal with Stake to begin as well. I've seen a lot of people say, maybe the club are just waiting to release, the new kit for Tarkowski to be seen in and stuff like that. That might be the case. Ultimately, for James Tarkowski to be announced as an Everton player wearing last season's kit, despite the fact he didn't play last season, and it's sponsored by a sponsor that he won't be playing under either because that sponsor is gone, it wouldn't really make much sense, would it? It would make more sense for him to be announced, I'm not saying be announced at the same time as the new kit and the new training gear, but certainly be announced in that sort of in that new gear, because he'll be playing under that season. It'd just be a bit more professional, look a bit more organised. So maybe the club are waiting for that as well. Ultimately, there's 2 or 3 reasons as to why this deal hasn't been announced yet. Another being that he's on holiday, so he mightn't have taken his media picture. Although I highly, I expect all of that sort of stuff to have been in place by now anyway. So, yeah, it looked like James Tarkowski's deal to Everton is done. Listen, we spoke a little bit about him last week when we done the video talking about this deal. I'm happy with it. He's coming in on a free transfer. He's a leader. He's certainly an improvement on the centre-backs that we've got. What happens with Yerry Mina now, I suppose, is the big question. Do we move Yerry Mina on? Do we keep him at the club? How much money should we be looking to, receive for Yerry Mina? But the reality of the situation is we've brought in a centre-half. We needed to bring in a centre-half, and we've brought one in. That by any means doesn't mean that the business is done. We still need to bring in a number 6 for me. We still need to bring in an athletic, dynamic midfielder who can get about the pitch and can ultimately bring some physicality and bring some athleticism to the team. We still need to bring in a creative midfielder, in my opinion. We still could do it bringing in probably a striker, depending on what happens with Richarlison or Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We might need replacements for them as well. So there's still an awful lot of business to be done. And, maybe there's too much business to be done. Maybe Everton won't be able to fill all of those positions in one transfer window. But the fact that we've gone out there and we've already brought in a centre half, before the window's even officially opened, is a positive, I suppose. It shows that Kevin Thelwell is, quite proactive in his decisions. He's obviously sat down with Frank Lampard at the end of the season and said, listen, James Tsarkovsky is available on a free, he's out of contract. Let's go and get him, and then that ultimately that's ultimately the centre back problem fixed for the time being. Before the transfer window's even open. So yeah, positive stuff. Be interesting to see how he plays. Obviously, I'm looking forward to seeing him play over in America. I'm sure he'll be part of that pre-season as well. And it'll be interesting to see who he lines up next to. Who will be James Tsarkovsky's centre-back partner at Everton? Will it be Michael Keane? Will it be Yerry Mina? I suppose it will be Yerry Mina when he's there and when he's fit, if he's still at the football club. But let's be honest, we know that is a rare occasion at the moment with Yerry Mina. Will it be Ben Godfrey? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But it looks like one of those two will be James Tarkowski. And do you know what? I think I said this last time we spoke about this deal, and I'll say it again. It's really, really important for me that Everton have a 1 and a 2 centre-back. So it's all well and good saying, yeah, but we've got our main two. Our main two are Yerry Mina and Ben Godfrey, or our main two are James Tarkowski and Ben Godfrey, whoever it may be. We need a quite clear number 1 and a clear number 2. All good teams have it. All the best teams have they have their centre-backs, and you could say, right, he's number 1. He's going in every week. He's then going in next to him. But then you've got a number 3, a number 4, a number 5. Not just they're the main two. You need a real sort of number 1, so that when that player is fit, he's in there no matter who is next to him. And hopefully James Tsarkovsky is that player, because I don't think we seem to have that player at the moment. You could say, okay, it's Yerry Mina, but Yerry Mina's not consistent enough to be the number 1. And, you're not going to say, oh, it's Michael Keane, because there's been games where Michael Keane has been fit and not being played, or the same with Ben Godfrey, same with Mason Holgate. So we don't seem to have that. We need that leadership. We need that commandment. We need that, ultimately we need that number 1 in the team, and I think James Tarkowski could be that. Logan has donated £9 to the live stream. Thank you so much, Logan. Really do appreciate it. He says, hi mate, what do you think about the money situation, and how are we going to improve the squad to not be in the same situation as this year? Love the videos, mate. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you very much, Logan. Really do appreciate that. The money situation is, you know what? It's disappointing for me, because listen, I knew we would be in this situation. Obviously, we were in this situation last season, and the money that we spent over the years, and not just the money we spent. Let's be honest, it's the money we've wasted. I know a lot of people like to say, "Hang on, Cam, but Villa have spent this much, or Liverpool have spent this much, or City have spent this much." Other teams have, but look at the players we've bought for the money we've bought that have ultimately left the club for nothing. Morgan Schneiderlin cost £23 million, walked out for £2 million. Gylfi Sigurdsson cost £45 million, walked out for nothing. Cenk Tosun cost £20 million, walked out for nothing. Theo Walcott cost £20 million, walked out for nothing. Fabian Delph, £8 million, walked out for nothing. Yannick Bolasie, £30 million, walked out for nothing. You know, it's not just well, we've spent £500 million. It's we've spent about 300 odd million and literally had no return on that investment. Not even 100 million, not even 50 million, literally zero. So we all know the reason we're in this position, and we all know it's down to incompetence and lack of football and brain from the owner and the board. But I was sitting here thinking about this before. I remember last season thinking, do you know what, if we take one summer here and we can take a hit on FFP for one summer, then hopefully next summer we'll have a little bit more leeway and we'll be able to spend a little bit more. And that's genuinely how I thought it would go. We'd have one summer transfer window where we didn't spend anything, and then, you know, we'd be able to go again, you know, this summer, and, you know, have a little bit more leeway, have a little bit more space. But it doesn't seem to be the case. We still seem to be in this position where we can only really spend what we bring in. And it was the same in January. Seen people saying, yeah, but you spent, you know, £30 million on fullbacks in January, but we didn't. We spent what we made back on Luca Dean in January. So I suppose my honest thoughts on it is disappointment and a bit of frustration. But we're in this position because it's only down to us at the end of the day. It's nobody else's fault other than the board and the owner, who have chronically wasted money year in, year out. And for that, we're being punished, and ultimately we're now in a position where we can only really spend what we bring in. And that's why, for us to significantly improve the squad, it might mean losing a Richarlison or a Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Because if we don't lose either of those two, where are we bringing money in from? I know everybody loves to think that we'll get 15 million for Andre Gomez and 15 million for Yerry Mina and 15 million for, you know, this player and that player and the other player, but we're not. Nobody's giving you £15 for Andre Gomez because he's fucking shite. You might get 12 odd million for Yerry Mina on the basis that he's a top player when he's fit, but that'll probably be in drips and drabs because the other team will ultimately say, well, hang on, he's never fit, so we're not just going to give you 15 million up front. So ultimately, yeah, I think we're in a position where we've got to make sacrifices now, and whatever that sacrifice is, I'm sure we'll find out over the coming weeks or so. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think players like James Tarkowski on a free transfer to come in at his age with his Premier League experience and with his leadership qualities, I think that's a deal that we would have been silly to walk away from, even though I don't quite think he's at that level of Yerry Mina. There's not many players that are at that level of Yerry Mina, and those players that are at that level will be incredibly expensive, and players that just Everton either can't attract or can't afford at the moment. Gomez is valued at 7 million, says Inky. If you get 7 million from Andre Gomez, I'll literally have a party in ours, and you're all invited to it. So, yeah, it's difficult, but it is what it is. It's the situation we're in, and yeah, we just have to put up with it, really, and move on from it. If you are enjoying, by the way, please hit that like button. Over 100 people watching. If you could get the likes up, that would be amazing. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. Let's move on then and talk about Manchester City's Oleksandr Zinchenko. According to The Athletic, and there have been a number of reports regarding Zinchenko being linked with Everton. Most of them have just been Everton are interested in Zinchenko, Everton are keen on Zinchenko, Everton are, Everton are keeping an eye on him, but it was always involving other teams as well. So is so-and-so, so is so-and-so, so-and-so. But The Athletic reported earlier today that Everton are now the keenest club in the Premier League that wish to sign Manchester City's Oleksandr Zinchenko. Now, obviously, that doesn't mention clubs abroad, that doesn't mention clubs in Europe, that doesn't mention whoever else in the Premier League is interested as well. It just says Everton are the keenest in the Premier League in wanting to sign Oleksandr Zinchenko from Manchester City. Now, yeah, before we get into this, by the way, Jack says Sorry, not Jack. Inky says Gomez 7 million, Mina 15, Richie 65, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin 60. We can't sell Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We can't sell the both of them. We can only sell one of them. The risk we would be taking by selling the both of them would be ridiculous. Ridiculous. Because if we don't replace what the pair of them bring, and last season was an anomaly because Dom was injured for 90% of it, but if we don't replace the 20 odd goals that those two bring, then we're fucked. We could quite comfortably be relegated next season. So for me, we absolutely can't sell a pair of them. We can only sell one of them. It'd be too much of a risk to sell a pair of them. And I don't think you get 60 for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, to be honest with you. I don't think you get 7 for Andre Gomez. I really don't. But anyway, Oleksandr Zinchenko. Yeah, I think he's a good player. I think he's obviously, he's been at Manchester City now for a number of years. He's won a number of Premier League titles. He's won a number of, he's ultimately won a number of, FA Cups, Carabao Cups, all of that. He's won 4 Premier League titles, 1 FA Cup, 4 Carabao Cups, 2 Community Shields, 1, is that Team of the Year? No, 1 Footballer of the Year. I don't know whether that's Ukrainian Footballer of the Year. He's 25 years old. His position is down as left back, but we all know he wants to play in the midfield. That's, I suppose, part of the reason so why he wants to leave Manchester City. His profile, let's have a little look at last season. So last season he had 15 appearances, no goals, 4 assists. 26% of those appearances were in the starting 11. No yellow cards, no red cards either, to be fair to him. Obviously, he had 8 appearances in the Champions League with 1 assist, 4 in the FA Cup, no assists or goals, and 1 in the EFL Cup with no assists or goals. Joined Manchester City from PSV, I believe, for £4 million after going there on loan. He was at Manchester City, went to PSV on loan, and then went back to PSV. And in terms of his stats overall, let's have a little look at his overall Premier League stats. Just to gauge it, I suppose, a look at. So 76 appearances in the Premier League, 7 assists, no goals, I don't think, in the Premier League. 29 appearances in the Champions League, so he's got Champions League experience, 4 assists there as well. Overall, 193 appearances in his career at a professional level, 5 goals, 31 assists, 10 yellow cards, 1 red card. So he's definitely not a goal scorer for the midfielder, which means I'm not too sure he's exactly what Everton need. Now, I know a lot of people will come and say, yeah, well, we're not bringing him in to be a goal scorer, Cam. We're not bringing him in to be a goal scorer. But the way I see it is, if we're bringing in a midfielder now, they almost have to be able to score goals, because we've already got enough midfielders that don't score goals. We've already got Alan, who doesn't score. Now, whether or not he'll be an Everton player come the end of this summer is a different question, but he doesn't score. Abdoulaye Doucouré, who can score, and hopefully we'll get more goals out of him next season. But doesn't score enough. Tom Davies, who doesn't score. Andre Gomez, who doesn't score. Dele, whether or not he'll be here next season, but he hasn't scored so far. Alex Iwobi really scores. So, can we afford to add Oleksandr Zinchenko in there as another midfielder that doesn't score? Now, you could say, well, okay, well, if he's an athletic, quick midfielder that can get in there and almost do the Ajisagana Gay type of role, then it wouldn't be too bad. But will he be able to do that? We haven't seen an awful lot of him in midfield. Certainly not in the Premier League for Manchester City. Now, he obviously fancies himself as a midfielder. That's where he wants to play. That's where he sees his future. He doesn't see his future at left back. That's why he wants to leave Manchester City. But are we in a financial position and a squad position, really, given we've only just survived relegation? Are we in a position to be able to say to Oleksandr Zinchenko, yeah, lad, we'll bring you in and we'll give you the go in midfield? Because what happens if he ends up being absolutely shite? Mike's struggling a bit, sound is fine, but occasionally buzzes, says Wonderlust. I'm not too sure what that's about, because I haven't changed anything about it. It might just be me trying to wipe the water away from my mouth, because I keep taking zincs of water, and it keeps bloody thingying down my mouth. I'm not too sure why that would be about, but I'll have a listen back to it. Let me know if there's any issues with the sound or the mic, by the way. I'm not too sure why there would be, but if there is, let me know, and I'll try and get that fixed. But yeah, are we really in a position to be able to give Oleksandr Zinchenko his opportunity to play in midfield in the Premier League, as per se? I don't really know. Add that to the fact that he would cost quite a fair bit of money because of what I've just talked about. He's got Champions League experience. He's a Premier League winning international captain. All of this comes with a price tag, by the way. You know, some people look at it and go, well, that doesn't matter because he's only a fringe player at Manchester City. He's a Champions League experience, Premier League winning captain of his international team. That in itself is £30-odd million before you'd even talk about him as a player, his importance to the City team, etc., etc. I just think for the money he would cost us, I just don't know whether we could afford to take that risk. And I don't know whether I'd want Everton to take that risk. Listen, he's a talented footballer. Very, very, very clearly a talented footballer. You know, you wouldn't get into Manchester City's team and you wouldn't have been at Manchester City for as long as he has and has played as many times as he has for Manchester City without being a talented footballer. Of course you wouldn't. But I just don't know. I just look at it and think, if we were looking at this and we weren't discussing selling Richarlison, and we weren't discussing the desperate need for a creative midfielder, which he isn't, and the desperate need for a dynamic, athletic, sort of commander in the midfield, which I don't think he would be, and we weren't discussing the massive need for a centre-back, which, okay, might be filled by Tarkowski, then, okay, you might look at Shinchenko and go, do you know what, it's worth the risk, but be honest, and there's 127 people watching live. If you are enjoying, please hit that like button. Could we get to 50 likes? That'd be amazing. Be honest, out of the 127 people that are watching and wanting to comment, how much do you think Everton would have to pay for Oleksandr Zinchenko? Being honest, just by looking at it on the surface of things, how much do you think Oleksandr Zinchenko would cost? Bearing in mind he's 25 years old, as I said, international captain, I believe, Champions League experience, Premier League experience, and he's contracted until June 2024, so he's still got 2 years left on his deal. I think you're looking at upwards of £30-odd million. I really do. 25, £30-odd million. And I just don't think that Everton would be able to pay that. I mean, Yatesy says 40 million, Stoddy says 35, Jason says 50. Can we really afford to be paying even £35 million on a player that, yes, he's a decent player, yes, he would improve the team, yes, he would technically be probably the best at the club, but does he have enough output for that amount of money given our financial situation? I don't think he does. I don't think he does. Joe says 35, Nev says 24, Mark says we need to vastly improve the midfield. Zakore's first touch poor and pass accuracy, Alan's too slow, need to score goals. Max says 28, 35 says Mr. W, Jack says 30 to 35 says Chris. Other Chris says, I'd say it's a good investment, versatile midfielder, good age, stats back him up with being a good hold midfielder. Listen, he's obviously a technically a very good footballer. I haven't seen enough of him in midfield to be able to say, yeah, he would massively improve our midfield. Because at the end of the day, Manchester City have bought their fair share of centre midfielders since Oleksandr Zinchenko has been at the football club. And never really given him that chance. Pep Guardiola's never really given it. And I get that Everton and Manchester City are on complete ends of the scale, the complete other end of the scale. But firstly, we haven't got that money to spend. Firstly. So if we are going to spend that money, it will have to have come in from a sale of somebody else. Now, are we really going to spend £30-odd million of the Richarlison money on a midfielder when we need to go and replace the goals that Richarlison's obviously we're losing in Richarlison if he is to leave? I don't think we should. And where else are we getting money from? Maybe selling a Mina or a Gomez or whatever. We might make enough to bring in 30-odd, Oleksandr Zinchenko. But I personally would rather go and bring in a creative midfielder for that money. Or even an athletic sort of Yves Bissouma type of player who ironically has just gone to Tottenham for £25 million. So, yeah, I like Shinchenko. He's obviously technically a very good footballer. You know, and it's easy to look not great in that Manchester City team because it's full of great footballers. But I'm just not too sure he's what we need at this time for the money that we'd spend on him. But listen, I might be wrong. If he comes in, if he comes in, I would get behind him. And Adam says Moise Kean money, I'd assume. I don't actually think we are due the Moise Kean money until next summer because he was on a 2-year loan. So, I believe. So, I don't actually think that money's coming in until next summer unless they decide to give it early and then sell him, which could happen. But again, is no guarantee. So, yeah, we'll wait and see on the Zinchenko stuff. Obviously, it's still early days. It just says Everton are the keenest Premier League club on him. That means very, very little. Keenest might be Everton are the first to have a meeting with Manchester City, and Manchester City might say, right, we want 35 million, and Everton might go, have a lovely day, point us in the direction of the nearest Starbucks, and we'll see us after. Because we can't afford to be spending that much money on a player like Oleksandr Zinchenko. But we'll wait and see how this one progresses over coming weeks. He ultimately is a very good footballer, as people are pointing out. He's got a relationship with Vitaly Mykolenko as well. Is it just me, by the way? Is it just me? Let me know in the comments. Would anybody else rather spend 40 million on a proper creative midfielder or somebody like an Yves Bissouma type player? Is it just me that is thinking there's other areas in the pitch that we could do with spending that money in, as opposed to a risk on a player who is very, very good and technically very good, but hasn't really played in the position that he wants to play in, certainly not at this level? I don't know. Anyway, let's move on to some other transfer rumours then. We'll let the Zinchenko one simmer for a little bit, and depending on whether or not that anything comes of that in the future, we'll wait and see. According to Portuguese newspaper Sport, Everton, Crystal Palace, Fulham and Brighton are all keen on Porto left-back Zaidu Sanzi. The player is open to a move for England if an offer in the region of 20 million is made. Well, the player doesn't determine how much he goes for a start, so I'm not really sure why that was part of the article. Yeah, this is just another player being linked with a move to Everton, isn't it? Really, it will very unlikely to happen, especially considering we've got Vitaly Mykolenko, who's obviously our number one left back and will continue to be our number one left back next summer. I don't see why Everton would spend £20 million that we haven't got on another left back. It makes no sense whatsoever. So I'm not even going to sit and entertain that for more than 30 seconds because I don't believe it whatsoever. Let's talk about Matheus Nunes then. I do want to talk about John Joe Kenny as well, because he has written a letter to Evertonians. We're not going to read the whole letter out because it's quite a lengthy one, but we'll read some bits and bobs of it out. Obviously, John Joe has confirmed his move to Hertha Berlin. Best of luck to John Joe, of course, over in Germany. But the Matheus Nunes news is coming from Foot Mercato, and they have said that Everton have made an approach for Sporting Lisbon midfielder Matheus Nunes. Wolves have also made an approach. Lisbon have rejected the £45 million offer from an unnamed club already and wants no less than €60 million, not pounds, euro, for the Portuguese midfielder. Now, this is, it's one of them, isn't it? Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think he had a buyout clause of something like 12 or 15 million pounds or something like that when we were interested in him last summer, and we decided not to go ahead with it at that point. However far down the line that was at that time, we don't know. If you believe certain newspapers and certain publications, he was effectively an Everton player, so I don't really know how that happened. But yeah, again, I just don't believe this, and I'm just not willing to get myself caught up in it either, because I remember sitting here last season doing a large team last summer, and we were all convinced that this lad was going to be an Everton player, and it was only a matter of time, and we done the exact same in the following January with Luis Diaz, and lo and behold, Luis Diaz went to them lot and is absolutely brilliant, and Matheus Nunes is now worth £80 odd million apparently. So listen, on the very basis of what that article says, and this is obviously not even. Let's just say that the article is 100% true, and it's probably not because they never are. But let's say it is. Everton aren't paying anywhere near that much money for Matheus Nunes. It's as simple as that. We are never, ever, ever paying anywhere near that amount of money for Matheus Nunes. We're just not. The article obviously reads that about 45 different clubs are interested in him, and it's probably just his agent throwing Everton's name in the hat to give him a little bit of a boost, I suppose, because we were linked so heavily with him last summer. Maybe there's a team that are really interested in him, and his agent and his team has decided to say, well, you might be really interested, but so are Everton, so you'll have to up your bid, or you'll have to give us a bigger agent fee because you've got Everton there who want to bring him in again. The reality of the situation is, I can't see Matheus Nunes ever becoming an Everton player, but I can see Everton being linked with Matheus Nunes every transfer window for about the next 5 years, because there's always a player that happens with. Always a player that happens with. He's a good player. I think ultimately what happened is he had such a low buying clause, or they wanted very little for him last summer. He then ended up having a decent start to the season. He got a new contract, and now he's obviously got a clause in there which says that if teams want him, then they're going to have to pay ridiculous amounts of money for him. He's a good player. He'd improve our midfield. He'd bring a little bit of flair. He'd bring a little bit of quality to it as well. I think he'd be that creator that we arguably need, but for the money that we'd have to pay for him, it isn't happening. It's not happening. Whether we wanted to or not, whether we like the look of him, whether we were excited last summer or not, it's not happening, is it? Let's be honest. It's another rumour, another bit of paper talk that probably nothing will come off. But it is interesting because the Portuguese league is heavily, heavily being targeted by top Premier League clubs at the moment, and Premier League clubs that are notoriously very, very good at recruitment. So it's interesting that Everton are looking in and around that area as well, because that's exactly where Everton should be looking, because that's clearly where the talent is on show at the moment. And then, I think that's pretty much it for transfer rumours. I know we've been linked with one or two players here and there. Again, sort of paper talk at the moment. Everton and 63 other clubs are interested in a number of players. I think there was one about Dwight McNeil last night. Everton, Newcastle, Tottenham, Brentford, West Ham and Fulham are all inquired about Dwight McNeil. So again, typical. Everton have inquired about the same player that a load of other teams have inquired about. That was Graham Bailey who reported that. And then according to Tom Colomosi, who was a sports journalist for the Mail, Everton may look at Watford striker Emmanuel Dennis. If Richarlison leaves this summer, Watford will sell the Nigerian for about £20 million. I think that's just said, or above £20 million, but would want about £20 million. So, listen, I like Emmanuel Dennis. I think he's a good player. Obviously, depending on how much money we would get for Richarlison would determine how much we ultimately pay for him. I've just actually seen an interesting stat from Tactically Matt. If you know Matt on Twitter, if you're on Twitter, you probably follow Matt. He said that when Watford came to Goodison Park and walloped us 5-2, Dennis played 32 minutes at right wing. He scored 1 and assisted 2. New right winger. So he come off the bench, didn't he? And I remember him coming off the bench and just having an absolute field day at Goodison on the same day that Josh King decided to have a field day, and on the same day that Everton decided to lose a game that somehow in the last 10 minutes we were 2-1 up and managed to lose 5-2, which is just absolutely baffling. But I like Dennis. I think he's a good player. It'd be interesting if we were to sell Richarlison and then bring in his replacement from the same club we brought Richarlison in for. Whether or not he's good enough to come in and replace Richarlison, I don't know, but he's certainly got talent, he's certainly got quality, and he's certainly one that you look at and you think, he could very much be one for the future. A little bit like Ismail Sarr, who I feel the same about. And, ultimately these are the type of players that teams take risks on and they pull off. They come off, pull off, that was a bit mad. They come off, Palace did it with Elise and Eze, and, look at how good those two are for Crystal Palace. So, I wouldn't mind Dennis, to be fair. I think he's a good player. Whether or not that will happen, we'll wait and see, but... it's certainly an interesting rumour. And then to finish off, let's have a little look at John Joe Kenny's farewell letter, shall we? If you are enjoying, by the way, please hit that like button. 1 like off 50. So if we could get that likes up, that would be amazing. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. John Joe obviously left for Hertha Berlin earlier this week. He said, ever since I was a young kid, playing for Everton was all I wanted to do. Playing for this club was living the dream. Everyone knows the story that I lived a 2-minute walk from Goodison Park and I could see the stadium from my bedroom window. I've been in Everton since I was 9 years old. It's a club I love, a club I was brought up on. I always remember the journey to Goodison for the Crystal Palace game at the end of last season. We were driving in from our hotel. You go down Scotland Road and past the little football cages where I used to play as a kid. I know that game was nerve-wracking and none of us wanted to be in that situation, but to go from that kid playing in those cages to playing for Everton Football Club in such a big match, I just had a moment where I thought, you've done all right. I'll never forget those last few weeks of the season. I think it was in that moment when I knew that I was ready to maybe move on for a new chapter, maybe because I felt like I kept getting a bit emotional, especially when I was seeing the fans. So that's interesting, isn't it? Interesting that he comes out and basically says, effectively, he was playing as a fan in those last few games of the season, which is quite heartwarming to see, really, to hear, really. He said, it did keep bringing a little bit of fear to my eye because I knew that might be the end. They were lovely moments there that were great for me to see that reaction of everybody coming together. The funny thing was, I knew a lot of people who were outside cheering on the team coach. I knew who they were and what it meant to them. Just to be a part of that, seeing the fans where I grew up as a kid, it was emotional. Now I look back and can be really, really proud of what myself and my family have achieved. It meant so much to me to have played for Everton. There were tough moments, of course, but I wouldn't change it for the world. He then goes on to talk about the academy and a couple of stories in the academy. He says, I must say the current manager, Frank Lampard, has been a different class. He made me valued really at home at Everton and a big part of the team. I feel like I could bring a lot more to the side because I was playing a lot more. I had a lot more to say in terms of leading by example a little bit because I had been at the club for so long. Frank and his coaching staff were fantastic. To have that backing from the manager was great. I've loved every minute of being at Everton, but now I'm just ready to be a main part of a team. I've got more dreams that I want to go on and achieve. He then talks a little bit about Berlin and Schalke and being in Spain, being in obviously in Germany. He says, I've had a lot of lovely messages from people at Everton. Seamus rang me. I spoke to Deli, Tom, Davo, Mason, Ben. They're all close friends of mine. I've made friends for life and I'll always keep in touch. Everton will always be a part of me. I look back now on my time at Everton and at one point I thought maybe I could have done more, but I did everything I could and I mean that. This club is all I've known, all I've ever done. I'll still be going to the Everton games when I can and supporting the lads always, especially with the manager and the backroom staff. I want Everton to be brilliant. I'm a Scouser who achieved this dream of playing for Everton. It's been a fantastic ride and I'm so grateful for everyone at this great club. Up the Toffees, John Joe. So quite a heartfelt message from John Joe Kenny there, considering, you know, a lot of academy players, you know, grow up and leave the football club, and a lot of academy players support the club, you know, all their lives, and then ultimately, you know, they're not good enough, so they end up moving on, and a lot of players come in and settle down and then end up moving on because they're not good enough. But you don't often get a message quite like that from John Joe, and I think there's a lot of interest in which, bearing in mind I missed out a lot of that letter because there was a lot of it talking about his time at the academy, and there was a lot of talking about his time in Germany when he was on loan at Schalke. But I think it is really heartwarming and sort of, you know, heart feeling to hear him say things like, basically towards the end of the season, I was playing as a fan, and that was, you know, that wasn't good because you ultimately let the emotional side get to you a bit too much, and you know that could be misviewed as, oh, it's unprofessional. But for me, I look at it and go, that's brilliant, that, because that's John Joe effectively coming out and saying, when times got tough, I turned my I'm a professional footballer head off and I just went, I'm an Evertonian, and that ultimately is really, really nice to hear. Listen, I've got nothing against John Joe. I've got nothing against him. He ultimately, you know, he's played his fair share of professional games for Everton. I think we all know he was never going to be good enough to be that player that sort of takes us forward and be that long-term replacement for Seamus Coleman. But he gave everything every time he was on the pitch. He worked hard, he battled, and ultimately he's lived every one of our dreams. So how can we be anything but grateful and, you know, slightly jealous, but grateful to John Joe for that. John Joe Kenny has done what I wish I'd done growing up for a footballer. I played on them same cages he was talking about on Scotland Road. I played on them as a kid. I was there, playing there, in the pitch. That's what he's talking about, the pitch. He's talking about the Power League on Scotland Road. I played there for years as a kid. and he lived the dream that I had, and that I'm sure everybody watching this live stream had, of growing up and playing for Everton Football Club. I wish him nothing but the best. I wish him good luck over in Germany. I'll be catching the Hertha Berlin games when I can. And as I said, hopefully when he comes back, he sits in the Gladys seat, or he sits with the fans, because I don't think there'll be any Evertonian that would have a go at John Joe or moaning him or whatever. I know he'll likely sit in the box, or the posh seats or whatever, but how good would it be to go to a game at Goodison next season and there's John Joe Kenny standing in the Gladys seat cheering on the lads? It'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Because he's clearly an Evertonian, and I'm sure he'd want that as well. But yeah, really, really heartfelt message, quite an emotional one. I think he's right. It was the right time for him to go, for him, for Everton, for us. I think it was right. And I've got a lot of respect for John Joe for not just sticking around for the sake of rinsing the club of money. He had a contract offer there for a 3-year deal. That the club openly admitted he rejected, and he didn't reject it because Everton is shit and I don't want to be here. And if you believe that, then I don't really know what to tell you. He rejected it because he obviously felt like his time at the club was done and he needed to go and challenge himself elsewhere, which takes a lot, because a lot of academy players have just gone, yeah, nice one. Not academy players, a lot of players who've been in the club for so long would have just gone, yeah, nice one, I'll take that nice 20, 30, 40 grand a week for the next 3 years of basically doing nothing. But he hasn't. He's gone, no, do you know what? I'm going to challenge myself, and I can only respect that. So big fair play to John Joe, and wishing him the very, very best of luck over in Germany. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. That's pretty much all the news that we've got, to be honest with you. The Tarkowski deal is effectively done, and we're just waiting on an announcement. According to the Echo, the Shinchenko stuff is interesting because Everton are very clearly keen on him, but whether or not that will go anywhere, we'll wait and see. And yeah, every other rumour is just nonsense paper talk at the moment, so we'll wait and see on that one. Yeah, there you go. Big thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. Massive thank you to everybody for watching live in the live comments. Really do appreciate it. If you're watching as a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below and we'll get involved with as many of them as we possibly can as well. We'll be back over the next couple of days. We're going to talk about Kevin Thelwell. We're going to talk about the differences he's making at the football club, and we're going to do the season review of last season as well. So don't forget to join us for those. But a big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you soon.